This is the third video of the series on chapter 4 and the final video, and it's built up to this point of figure 4.3. So this is, we've done this graph a few times. So we see the monopoly at point M and the competitive firm at point E. And why does the competitive firm not make a profit at point E? Because the average cost curve is above the demand curve, and it's constructed like that. So notice something that we haven't pointed out until now, and that is that the average cost is decreasing all the time. It never reaches a minimum and starts increasing again, and so the marginal cost never cuts through the average cost. And we have drawn the demand curve such that it cuts through the marginal cost curve to the right of the graph below average cost. So the monopoly could make a profit, but the competitive firm not. And that is the case with natural monopolies. What is a natural monopoly? That's exactly where the whole point starts. And natural monopoly is a firm that is naturally takes up the form of a monopoly. It's like, think of the airline of Zimbabwe. How many people does Zimbabwe have that want to fly around? It doesn't make sense to, it wouldn't make sense to have 2, 3 or 4 airlines in Zimbabwe, because they would just sit on the ground and not fly. There isn't even a market for one airline to make a profit. It's like electricity in the olden days. People just thought, well, to erect all the masts and have built a grid throughout the country, it would just take one big firm to do that, which would naturally be a monopoly. The airlines in South Africa have also always suffered. They don't really need state capture to suffer. They suffer to make a profit as it is, because the market is so small. So that's the case here. So we think of electricity. If Eskom as a monopoly had its way, they would charge PM and produce too little electricity for South Africa. So the government wants to regulate the idea. If the government says, well, we make the market competitive, we want to produce at the competitive price PE and produce enough electricity where marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost, then they will have to subsidize electricity, because point E is below point S, and every firm in the market would then make a loss. So the government has different ways of regulating. They will allow Eskom, the monopoly, but they will regulate Eskom through the institution called NERSA, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. So the regulation works like this. There are different types of regulation which you must know about. The first one is rate of return regulation. Can you point out the profits that the monopoly would make in this case if they are not regulated? Well, let's say that the government decides on the amount of profits that Eskom could make. Let's say they say the profit they can make is the size of the blue rectangle. It is smaller than the profits that Eskom would love to make, namely that, which we've shown in the previous graphs. So a smaller profit would mean they sell at a lower price, and at a lower price consumers will buy more of the good. So let's say the government decides they regulate the profits, and in that way the price will come down and the amount of electricity produced will increase. The second way of doing it could be to have price cap regulation. They could just decide on a maximum price. That's basically what NERSA is doing. NERSA does price cap regulation. They do their best to calculate what is a reasonable price for Eskom to cover their costs, and then they give them a certain percentage which they may use every year to increase the price of electricity. So price cap regulation could be very similar to, it could result in the same outcome. It could also result in the same price and quantity in the market. But if they cap the price, then the firm could think, okay, well, if the price is fixed, then to make more profits, they will just have to be more efficient. And so they can work on efficiency gains so that they can increase their profits, given the price that they can sell their stuff in the market at. And then the government could use a third way of regulation, namely sliding scale regulation. So they could start with a certain price, and they will know the firm will then try to save money on their production, and if they then find that the firm makes too much profits, they may decrease the price in a sliding scale type of scenario. So you should read everything about Eskom and NERSA that you can find in the textbook. In chapter 4 there's a long section on how they go about negotiating. But you should also read Eskom and NERSA. It's like a soapy in the media because they're at each other's throats all the time. They have court case upon court case upon court case against each other because Eskom doesn't like to be regulated, and NERSA doesn't like Eskom to be like a naughty child, not listening to what they have to say. So open your eyes and start reading about Eskom and NERSA. It's really fascinating material to read. Read the summary, do the questions at the back of the textbook.